Oh hey, and welcome to another episode of The Blue Wizard Bakes. What? What do you mean? Oh... Right. Hold on. Oh hey, and welcome to another episode of The Blue Wizard No Bakes. I'm Joe the Blue Wizard. You know, throughout my life, I always heard the phrase easy as pie. But then when I actually started making pies for myself, I got a little confused because pie isn't very easy. Everything from making the perfect pastry dough, to rolling it out thin enough, to forming it properly, to making the perfect filling, to baking it for just the right amount of time. I mean, it can be a little bit finicky. And with Thanksgiving coming up here in the US, there's a lot of pressure out there to make the perfect pie, especially when it comes to pumpkin pie. So that got me thinking, I should put together a recipe that allows you to make the perfect pumpkin pie, but doesn't take a lot of work, effort, or a lot of stress. And that perfect pie is my no-bake pumpkin pie. It tastes just like the original, but none of the stress. So let's head over to the kitchen so that we can put the easy back in easy as pie. Alright, so now that we're here, we're going to do what we normally do. Well, almost. We're not going to be preheating our oven today because remember, we're making a no-bake recipe. However, we are going to be getting our ingredients together so that we have everything we need, where we need it, when we need it. So let's make some magic. Alright, so now that we have everything together, it's time for us to get started with our crust. Now, since this is a no-bake pie, we're actually going to be making a graham cracker crust for this recipe, because though you can bake a graham cracker crust, you don't have to. And so that's going to make our crust really easy to do with our no-bake pie. So we're going to start off with one package of graham crackers, and this package holds 9 graham crackers, which is about the same, about standard, about the same. If you go up to 10, not a big deal. And I'm going to take and place these graham crackers into a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. Don't come for me. I know that it's holiday and it's not the holidays yet. I get it, okay? It's just the ones that I had laying around the house. All right, so now that we have the graham crackers in the bag, we're going to take and break them up and crush them with a rolling pin. Now, there are 2 ways that you can go about this. You can go about it the nice, easy way, gently pressing against the crumbs. Or you can do it the fun way, the gentle way, or the fun way. We'll just do it the gentle way for the rest of it. All right, so what you're looking for is to get some nice fine crumbs. You don't want to have any big chunks inside of there, okay? And so I think that that's a good consistency. Now, if you have a food processor, you could always take and put the graham crackers inside the food processor and give it a couple of pulses, and then it's done just in a few seconds. But I figured, why not we do it this way? This way you know that you really don't have to have any sort of like super-powered equipment in order to get this done. After our graham crackers have been crushed up into nice fine crumbs, we're gonna take and add in some coconut oil. So coconut oil is a solid at room temperature, and so it could be used as a substitute for butter in a lot of recipes. So this coconut oil, even though it's a solid at room temperature, I've taken and melted in the microwave for about 30 seconds. This way, it's going to be able to coat our graham cracker crumbs a lot more easily. And I'm using about 4 tablespoons of the coconut oil in here. So I'm just going to dump that right in the bag. This way we don't have to dirty another dish. And then I'm going to take and sort of move it around inside the bag. And notice I'm being very careful because I've left the top of the bag open. I feel like if you seal the top of the bag, there gets like air trapped in there and then it's harder to move around. So I actually leave the top of the bag open. I'm just very careful when I'm moving it around so it doesn't spill out the top. So now that all of those graham cracker crumbs are coated with the oil, I'm going to take and place it into our pie dish. This is a 9-inch pie plate that I'm using. And you can see it a lot easier from this angle, but our graham cracker crumbs are the consistency of wet sand, and that's exactly what you're looking for. If you find that they're a little bit too dry, you can always add just a little bit more coconut oil. All right, so now that our crumbs are inside of our 9-inch pie plate, we're going to take and press them in. And I want to press the crumbs into the bottom of the pan as well as up the sides. And you'll notice that as I'm pressing them up the sides, that I am making sure also to press against the top of the side portion as well. This way we get a nice clean top to our crust. And after I get a nice good shape to it, about what I want to make sure to press these down firmly with a flat bottomed object. I'm using just a little cup that I use to measure out my coconut oil. And again, we want to get that pressed down nice and firm so that the graham crackers hold themselves together when the pie is done and ready to go. And if you see any cracks, like you see right here, you could just instantly press more crumbs into that area. It's very forgiving, very easy to do. And that's good. All right, so now that our crust is put together and it's well formed, we're gonna take and place it into the fridge to chill while we're putting together our filling. And the colder that this crust gets, the more stable it's going to get. So we wanna leave it in there for a good, probably about 15 minutes before we start filling it. Now that our crust is in the fridge and it's getting nice and cold, it's time for us to get started with our filling. So I have a large bowl here, and into that large bowl I've already added 4 ounces of cream cheese. And this is actually light cream cheese because, as we know, we're very health conscious on this channel. 2.5 sticks of melted butter. 1 stick of butter. 2 cups of sugar into the mix. I'm going to take a mixer, and I always like, whenever I'm doing something with cream cheese or with butter, I actually like to get it blended up a little bit first. I think that it makes the cream cheese or butter or whatever you're using blend in with the other ingredients a little bit more easily. So I'm just going to do that right now. The other ingredients that we're going to add, the first one is going to be a half a can of pumpkin puree. Now, so half a can is going to be about like 7 ounces if you're wanting to weigh these types of things. If you don't want to weigh it, then it's just under a cup. If you added a cup, it's not that big of a deal. All right, so we're going to add in that pumpkin puree. And again, this is not pumpkin pie filling, this is pumpkin puree. All right, so don't get pumpkin pie filling. That stuff already has other things inside of it, as well as other spices, and we don't want any of that because we're going to add all of our own. So after the pumpkin puree, we're going to start to add in our spices. I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, half of a teaspoon of ginger, and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, cloves, and allspice. And these seasonings that we've added are the same spices that are inside of a pumpkin pie spice that you could buy at the grocery store. So if you don't want to have all of these things inside of your pantry, then you could just buy a jar of that and add about 1 tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice to this mixture, and it'll do the same thing. The next thing we're going to add is 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. And then we're going to take and blend it all together. So you want to get that blended together to be nice and smooth, but to make sure that we get it nice and smooth, we have to first take and scrape down the edges of our bowl, just to make sure that we get anything that was stuck to the sides. And then we go in and blend it again. All right, so that gives us a nice and smooth consistency that you can see, and altogether that took me about 2 minutes together, okay, of blending it and scraping down the sides and then blending it again. So one thing I actually did forget to add to the mixture before I started blending it together was 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Because you know we don't measure vanilla here on this show. And then it's really easy to just mix it in without even using the mixer. Which just goes to show you that even if you make a mistake in a recipe, you can always go back and fix it. Not a big deal. Now the last ingredient that we want to add into this filling is going to be some whipped topping. And again, I'm using light whipped topping. Again, health. We're only going to add half of this container of whipped topping into this mixture. We're not going to use the whole thing. I promise you though, we will use the other half later. anytime that you're adding something like a whipped cream or whipped topping into a mixture, you don't want to lose any of the air that is inside of that whipped topping. So we're going to do a process known as folding, where instead of mixing it together really rough, where we pop all the air bubbles, we're going to do it nice and gently. All right, so the way that you do this is you go down the center with your spatula and then fold over the top, and then go down the center, fold over the top. And you keep doing that and turning the bowl as you go until eventually you're going to see that there's no white streaks left. And you can see that after about 30 seconds of folding, you have no more white streaks, no more dark streaks, and you have a nice homogeneous mixture, which is exactly what you're looking for. We're good. Now that our filling is done, I've grabbed our crust from the refrigerator and I'm going to take the filling and place it inside of the crust. So I'm just going to take and scrape that in. Make a nice big mound. Now you could just smooth this over with your regular spatula, but you guys know that I'm a little bit extra. And so I'm going to take an offset spatula and I'm going to spread it out with that just to make sure that my top is nice and smooth. So now that our filling is nice and smooth over the top, we're going to take this and place it into the fridge just so that the filling can firm up in the fridge and get nice and cold. So it's going to sit in there for about an hour just to make sure that the filling gets nice and firm and sliceable. So let's do that. So while that's in the fridge chilling, I just want to remind you guys that if you like this video and you want to make this recipe, the recipes are always in the description box below this video. If you did like this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up down below. Also, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell for notifications, because it really does help me out. And it'll also notify you every time that I post a new video. If you want to keep up with me and see what I'm baking in between videos, then you can follow me on my social media. I'm on both Instagram and Twitter at the handle @JoeTheGlueWhiz. Also, please feel free to share with me any pictures of the bakes or cooks that you guys make. I would love to see the work that you do, especially if you make anything that I've shown you how to do here. Don't forget that if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for future videos, you can always leave me a comment down below. I love answering your questions and I'm always willing to try new things. Well, I think that our pie is ready, so I'm going to go head over and grab it from the fridge. Alright, so now that this has been chilling in the fridge for about an hour, it's time for us to add a topping onto the top. So I'm going to be using the rest of the light whipped topping that we used to make the filling a little bit earlier, and I'm just going to place it and spread it over the top. So once again, I'm going to go in with my offset spatula and I'm just going to gently press the whipped topping to the edges of the pie. And once again, I'm trying to get a nice smooth top. So now that topping is nice and smooth, we're going to just add a little bit of cinnamon to the top, just a little sprinkle, just to make it a little bit more fancy. And that's it, the pie is done. Now that our pie is done, it's time to cut out a slice. This is always the most nerve-wracking bit. Now it's time we take a taste. Awesome. It has that fantastic pumpkin flavor to it. Plus you can taste all of the spices that we put in there. It really tastes like real deal pumpkin pie, but it didn't take us that long to make and it was pretty easy. So I think that's a win. Well, that's all that we have time for here today on the Blue Wizard Bakes. I really hope that you try out this recipe so that you can put the easy back into easiest pie. Well, now it's time for me to go. So I'm just gonna grab this and, find a corner somewhere. Bye.
Remember, you don't have to be a professional chef or even a wizard to make magic in the kitchen.